Hi, this is Chef Skip. Now let's talk about Chapter 8, the safe flow of food. There is a flow of food through a food service facility. It starts when we purchase it. Every step of the flow must be handled with extreme care and an understanding of the potential hazards. Throughout the flow of food, it is important to limit the amount of time food is kept at unsafe temperatures and minimize contamination risks. Understanding where contamination can happen in these steps and knowing how to prevent it are critical tasks for all restaurant and food service professionals. Think about the food service kitchens you have seen at school or at restaurants. A lot of people are handling a lot of food. In this environment, pathogens can spread from one surface or food to another, otherwise known as cross-contamination. If food handlers understand how and when cross-contamination can happen, then they can prevent it. The most basic way to prevent cross-contamination is to separate raw food and ready-to-eat food. To do this, employees must make sure workstations, cutting boards, and utensils are clean and sanitized, not allow ready-to-eat food to touch surfaces that have come in contact with raw meat, seafood, or poultry, and to clean and sanitize work surfaces and utensils between each product preparation. If using the same table to prepare many kinds of food, prepare raw meat, seafood, and poultry at a different time than ready-to-eat food. Make sure chemicals are stored and used away from food and food contact surfaces. Many foodborne illnesses happen because TCS food has suffered from time and temperature abuse. This means food has remained too long in the temperature danger zone, 41 degrees to 135 degrees Fahrenheit. Pathogens grow well in this range, and they grow especially quickly in the middle of the range, between 70 and 125 degrees Fahrenheit. The longer food stays in the temperature danger zone, the more time pathogens have to grow. To keep food safe, reduce the time it spends in the temperature range. If food is held in a range for 4 or more hours, throw it out. In addition, food is time and temperature abused anytime it is cooked the wrong internal temperature, held at a wrong temperature, or cooled or reheated incorrectly. The most important tool used to monitor temperature is the thermometer. A common thermometer seen in restaurant food service is a bimetallic stem thermometer. This type of thermometer can check temperatures from 0 to 220 degrees Fahrenheit through a metal stem. This makes it useful for checking both hot and cold types of food. When checking the temperature, insert the stem into the food up to the dimple. The sensing area of the thermometer goes from the tip of the stem to the dimple. This trait makes the thermometer particularly useful for checking the temperatures of large, air-thick foods. When checking food temperatures, insert the probe into the thickest part of the food. This is usually the center. Also, you should take another reading in a different spot. The temperature may vary in different areas. Before recording a temperature, wait for the thermometer reading to steady. Bimetallic stem thermometers will take a little more time to steady than digital thermometers. Allow at least 15 seconds after you have inserted the thermometer stem into the food. Thermometers will only be effective if food handlers follow specific guidelines for using them. They also have to be adjusted regularly or calibrated to keep them accurate. Thermometers can lose their accuracy when they are bumped or dropped, or when they go through severe temperature changes. When this happens, the thermometer must be calibrated or adjusted to give a correct reading. Most thermometers can be calibrated, but some cannot and must be replaced, sent back to the manufacturer. You should follow the manufacturer's directions. There are two ways to calibrate a thermometer. One is to adjust its base on the temperature at which water freezes. This is called the ice point method. The other way is to adjust the base on the temperature at which water boils. This is called the boiling point method. Boiling is the point where water is hot enough that bubbles form and rise to the top in vapor or steam. While either way works, the ice point method of calibration is more common. The ice point method. Fill a large container with ice. Add tap water until the container is full. Stir the mixture well. Put the thermometer stem into the ice water. Make sure the sensing area is underwater. Wait 30 seconds or until the indicator stops moving. Do not let the probe touch the container. Adjust the thermometer to 32 degrees Fahrenheit by turning the dial. Use a wrench or other tool and rotate the nut until 32 degrees Fahrenheit is reached. It is also important to keep thermometers cleaned and sanitized to prevent cross-contamination. They are considered food contact surface and must be washed, rinsed, sanitized, and air dried. Be sure the sanitizing solution you use is for food contact surfaces. Keep storage cases clean as well. You have learned how cross-contamination happens and the importance of correct cleaning and sanitizing procedures, as well as how employees can contaminate food with poor personal hygiene. But those are not the only ways food can become contaminated. As a manager, you need to monitor cleaning and sanitizing and personal hygiene. You also need to start with purchasing safe food and then make sure you keep it safe after receiving it. All the food used in a restaurant and food service operation should come from an approved, reputable supplier. An approved food source is one that has been inspected by appropriate agencies and meets all applicable local, state, and federal laws. Restaurant and food service purchasers must make sure that their suppliers use good food safety practices. This applies to all suppliers along the supply chain, whether a local farmer or a large-sized corporation. An operations supply chain can include growers, shippers, packers, manufacturers, distributors, trucking fleets and warehouses, and local markets. To keep food safe during receiving, an operation needs to have enough trained staff available to receive, inspect, and store the food. Deliveries should be carefully and immediately inspected. Then they should be put away quickly and stored in the correct order. Use the guidelines that follow regarding temperature, packaging, and quality when deciding if an item should be accepted or rejected. Use thermometers to check food temperatures during receiving. Insert the thermometer stem or probe directly into the thickest part of the food. The center is usually the thickest part. Insert the thermometer stem or probe between two packages. If the packages allow, fold it around the thermometer stem or probe. Be careful not to puncture the package. Open a package and insert the thermometer stem or probe into the food. The sensing area must be fully immersed in the food. The stem or probe must not touch the package. Cold TCS food should be received at 41 degrees Fahrenheit or lower, unless otherwise specified by the manufacturer. Hot TCS food should be received at 135 degrees Fahrenheit or higher. Frozen food should be frozen solid. Reject any frozen food that has ice crystals on the product or packaging. Ice crystals can indicate the product may have been thawed and refrozen. You should also reject the food if any fluids or frozen liquids appear in the bottom of the case. The packaging of food and non-food items should be intact and clean. Reject any items with packaging problems such as dented, rusty, or bulging cans, or food packaging with tears, holes, punctures, leaks, dampness, or water stains. You should also reject any items with signs of pest damage or expired use-by dates. Meat, poultry, and eggs should also have an inspection stamp on their packaging. The stamps prove that the items meet the safety standards of the U.S. Department of Agriculture, or the USDA, or State Department of Agriculture. Poor food quality is sometimes a sign of time temperature abuse. Reject food if it has any of these problems. Moldy or has an abnormal color. For example, fresh fish should not have dark spots or discoloration. Slimy, sticky, or dry texture. Soft flesh that leaves an imprint when you touch it. Abnormal or unpleasant odors. Live shellfish such as oysters, mussels, clams, and scallops should be received at an air temperature of 45 degrees Fahrenheit and an internal temperature of no greater than 50 degrees Fahrenheit. Once received, the shellfish must be cooled to 41 degrees or lower in 4 hours. Shucked shellfish, shellfish that is removed from its shell, should be received at 45 degrees or lower. Cool the shellfish to 41 degrees or lower within 4 hours. Live shellfish must be received with shell stock identification tags. These tags must remain attached to the delivery container until all of the shellfish have been used. Employees must write on the tags the date that the last shellfish was sold or served from the container. Operators must keep these tags on file for 90 days from the date written on them. Reject shellfish if it's very muddy, broken shells, or dead. Eggs must be clean and unbroken when you receive them. Reject eggs if they do not meet the following guidelines. Shell eggs must be received in an air temperature of 45 degrees or lower. Liquid, frozen, and dehydrated egg products must be pasteurized and have a USDA inspection mark. Eggs also must meet USDA grade standards. Milk and dairy products must be received at 45 degrees Fahrenheit or lower. Cool the milk to 41 degrees or lower in 4 hours. These products also must be pasteurized and meet Food and Drug Administration grade A standards. Once food is purchased and received, it must be stored correctly to ensure safety. Store all TCS food at 41 degrees or lower, or at 135 degrees or higher. Make sure to monitor food temperatures regularly. Label all ready-to-eat TCS food that is prepped in-house if it will be held for longer than 24 hours. The label must include the name of the food and the date by which it should be sold, eaten, or thrown out. This food can be stored for a maximum of 7 days at 41 degrees or lower. Day 1 is the day that the food was prepared. After 7 days, you must throw out the food. Rotate food in storage to use the oldest inventory first. Many operations use the first in, first out, or FIFO method to rotate refrigerated, frozen, and dry food during storage. Here is one way to use the FIFO method. Identify the food items used by expiration date, which is usually somewhere on the packaging. Store items with the earliest use by or expiration dates in front of items with later dates. Once shelved, use those items stored in front first. Preventing cross-contamination during storage. You can store food to prevent cross-contamination by wrapping or covering it tightly. Store refrigerated raw meat, poultry, and seafood separately from ready-to-eat food. If raw and ready-to-eat food cannot be stored separately, store ready-to-eat food above raw meat, poultry, and seafood. This will prevent any raw food juices from dripping onto ready-to-eat food. Here's an example of how to store your foods. Number 1 on top should be ready-to-eat foods. Seafood should be next. Number 3, whole cuts of beef and pork. Number 4, ground meat and ground fish. And number 5, and always on the bottom, whole and ground poultry. This is all based on the minimum internal cooking temperatures. Do not overload coolers or freezers. Storing too many food items prevents good airflow and makes the units work harder to stay cold. Similarly, do not line cooler or freezer shelves with aluminum foil or cardboard. This blocks the circulation of cold air. Preparation. Cross-contamination and time temperature abuse can happen easily when you are preparing and cooking food, but you can prevent pathogens from spreading and growing by making good food prep choices and cooking food to safe internal temperatures. Time temperatures abuse can easily happen during preparation. Remove from the refrigerator only as much food as can be prepared in a short period of time. Prepare food in small batches. That way, ingredients will not sit out for too long in the temperature danger zone. When thawing food before preparation, it is important to remember that freezing does not kill pathogens. When frozen food is thawed and exposed to the temperature danger zone, any pathogens in the food will begin to grow. To reduce this growth, never thaw food at room temperature. Thaw TCS food in one of these ways: in a cooler at 41 degrees Fahrenheit or lower, submerged under running water at 70 degrees or lower. Make sure the water is potable, which means safe to drink. Never let the temperature of the food go above 41 degrees for longer than 4 hours. In a microwave oven if the food will be cooked immediately or as part of the cooking process, like throwing a frozen hamburger patty on a griddle. Cooking food to the correct temperature is critical for keeping it safe. Each type of food has a minimum internal temperature that it must reach. Once food reaches its minimum internal temperature, make sure that it stays at that temperature for a specific amount of time. Operations that mainly serve a high-risk population, such as nursing homes or daycare centers, cannot serve certain items. For example, they cannot serve raw seed sprouts or raw or undercooked eggs, meat, or seafood. 165 degrees Fahrenheit for 15 seconds. This would include poultry, including whole or ground chicken, turkey, or duck, stuffing made with TCS ingredients, stuffed meat, seafood, poultry, or pasta, dishes that include previously cooked TCS ingredients. 155 degrees for 15 seconds. Ground meat, including beef, pork, and other meat, not poultry, injected meat, including brined ham and flavor-injected roasts, mechanically tenderized meat, ground seafood, including chopped or minced seafood, shell eggs that will be hot held for service. 145 degrees for 15 seconds, seafood, including fish, shellfish, and crustaceans, steaks, chops of pork, beef, veal, and lamb, shell eggs that will be served immediately. 145 degrees for 4 minutes, roast of pork, beef, veal, and lamb. 135 degrees, commercially processed, ready-to-eat food that will be hot held for service. Commercially processed, ready-to-eat food that will be hot held for service, like cheese, sticks, deep-fried vegetables. 135 degrees, fruit, vegetables, grains like rice and pasta, and legumes, beans, refried beans that will be held for hot service. Holding TCS food. To hold TCS food safely, follow these guidelines. Hold hot food at 135 degrees or higher. Hold cold food at 41 degrees or lower. Check temperatures at least every 4 hours. Throw out any food that is in the temperature danger zone. And do not reheat food in hot holding equipment not designed to do so. Cooling TCS foods. Remember, pathogens grow well in the temperature danger zone, and they grow much faster at temperatures between 70 and 125 degrees. First, cool food from 135 to 70 within 2 hours. Then cool it to 41 degrees or lower in the next 4 hours. If food has not reached 70 degrees within 2 hours, it must either be thrown out or reheated, then cooled again. There are many ways to cool food quickly and safely. First, reduce the size of the food. Cut large food items into smaller pieces or divide large containers of food into smaller or shallow containers. The greater the surface area of the food, the more quickly it can release heat to cool. Then cool using one of these methods. Place small containers into a clean, sanitized prep sink or large pot filled with ice. This is called an ice water bath. Stir the food frequently and cool it faster and more evenly. Use clean and sanitized ice paddles to stir food. Ice paddles are plastic paddles that can be filled with ice or with water and then frozen. Food stirred with these paddles cool quickly. Add ice as an ingredient to food such as soups and stews. Place food in a blast chiller. This is not a common piece of equipment. Reheating TCS foods. How you reheat food depends on how you intend to use the food. Follow these guidelines when reheating food. Food for immediate service. You can reheat food that will be served immediately, such as beef or a beef sandwich, to any temperature. However, you must make sure the food was cooked and cooled correctly. Food for hot holding. You must heat TCS food for hot holding to an internal temperature of 165 degrees for 15 seconds. Make sure the food reaches this temperature within 2 hours from start to finish. So, you have purchased, stored, prepared, and cooked the food. Now you are ready to serve it. Again, to prevent contamination, kitchen and service employees must know how to serve food in ways that keep it safe, including handle ready-to-eat food with tongs, deli sheets, or gloves. Use separate utensils for each food item. Clean and sanitize them after each serving task. Store serving utensils in the food with the handle extended above the rim of the container. This prevents anyone from accidentally touching the food while they try to grab the utensil. Alternatively, place utensils on a clean and sanitized food contact surface. Guidelines for service staff when serving food. The service staff needs to be just as careful as the kitchen staff. They can contaminate food by handling a food contact area of glasses, utensils, and dishes. Do not stack glasses when carrying them. This can lead to chipping and breakage. Carry glasses in a rack or tray. Do not hold flatware by the food contact surface. Hold flatware by the handle. Store so servers grab handles. Avoid bare hand contact with ready-to-eat food. Handle ready-to-eat food with tongs, deli sheets, or gloves. Never scoop ice with bare hands or glass. Glasses may chip or break. Use ice scoops or tongs. Off-site food service. Any delay between preparation and service increases the threat to food safety. Food that will be served off-site has a greater risk of time, temperature, abuse, and contamination. Off-site service includes delivery, mobile, temporary kitchens, and vending machines. An insulated container keeps food at the correct temperature for holding, transporting, and catering. There are specific procedures to keep food for off-site service safe. Use insulated food containers that keep food out of the temperature danger zone. Use only food-grade containers that will not mix, leak, or spill food. Check internal food temperatures regularly. Clean the inside of delivery vehicles regularly. Label food with a use-by date and time, as well as reheating and service instructions for staff at the off-site location. Make sure the service site has the correct utilities, such as safe water and garbage containers. Store raw meat, poultry, and seafood separately from ready-to-eat items. A food safety management system. One of the best ways for restaurant and food service managers to prevent foodborne illness is to develop and follow a food safety management system. A food safety management system is a group of procedures and practices that work together to prevent foodborne illness. Combined, these procedures and practices control risk hazards throughout the flow of food in the operation. It is the manager's responsibility to actively control risk factors for foodborne illness. This is called active managerial control. It is important to note that active managerial control is proactive rather than reactive. You must anticipate the risk and plan for them. There are ways to achieve active managerial control in the operation. According to the FDA, you can use simple tools such as training programs, manager supervision, and the incorporation of standard operating procedures, or SOPs. Active managerial control can also be achieved through more complex solutions, such as a HACCP program. A Hazard Analysis Critical Control Point, or HACCP system, is an example of a food safety management system. HACCP identifies major hazards at specific points within a food's flow through the operation. The idea is that if managers can figure out where a biological, chemical, or physical hazard might happen, then they can prevent, eliminate, or reduce it. An effective HACCP system is based upon a written plan which considers an operations menu, guests, equipment, processes, and operations. Because there are so many variables, each HACCP plan is unique. A plan that works for one operation might not work for another. Monitoring is critical to the success of active managerial control. Food will be safe if managers monitor critical activities in the operation. Managers must take the necessary corrective action when required. They must also verify that the actions taken to control the risk factors for foodborne illness are actually working.